Here he is, our resident Survivor expert. We bring him on at the end of every season to discuss what we just saw. You saw him first on Survivor Tocatins and Survivor Cambodia. It is Stephen Fishbach. Stephen.
Hello. It's such an honor to be here now in video, now in living color.
I'm joining everyone else in 2024 and have gotten on the video train.
Oh,
it was basically right after, I think in July I started. So kind of maybe a month after I last had you on when we went over Survivor 46. But I purposely have stayed away from anything that you have said regarding Survivor 47 because I wanted to hear it for the first time from you on this podcast, since I know you've talked about it numerous times already. But I'm going to start out at the end here with this.
Okay.
Was Rachel's win the best victory and the best winner of the new era?
It's definitely competitive. I think it's I do think that's definitely, she's definitely up there. What's so interesting, I have trouble like ranking people because, I have always kind of felt like if you can get there and you can make the case, you did something right. And maybe we didn't see it all when in the edit, but I mean, Rachel played such a stellar game. She played this like underdog game. She had to win 4 immunities, tying the record. She had a spectacular idol play where she saved herself. She had no allies at one point. She had all the allies at another point. She had a lot of like really creative moves, like that move where she faked out, or she kind of assessed the votes with her shot in the dark. She went up and played the shot in the dark and then looked at the reactions to see if she needed to play her idol, if she was a target, that tribal council. So, I mean, I think it's up there. You also have players like Dee who were in a much more controlling position throughout the game, who were able to kind of dictate the flow in a way that Rachel really wasn't able to. And I think some people think, well, what is the more definitive Survivor skill? Is it controlling the votes? But on the other hand, Dee was really insulated. She had a lot of allies who stuck with her, and Rachel just didn't have that. So, I mean, Rachel certainly is up there for best winner of the new era. I saw Shannon Gus, who's a commentator on Survivor. She said best underdog player potentially ever in the series. You've got, and I think that's a really good category to put her in. Like, just thinking of different play styles, she is maybe the best underdog, certainly of the new era, and like potentially of all time.
I'm sure you've seen Dominic Abate's tweet. This came out before the finale. I don't know if it was days before, but it was before the finale when he was just kind of going back and forth with people on Twitter. I don't think there was arguments going on, but he was just saying kind of, well, what constitutes a great Survivor player in your mind? And he listed 3 things. Did you see this tweet or no?
I saw him, the bold proclamation he made at the end that I know you're leading up to, but yeah. I don't remember what the 3 things were that he kind of listed.
Okay, so he said, what exactly is it that everyone thinks constitutes a great Survivor game? Number 1, a dominant game where the winner was in control of every move and every vote. Number 2, a balanced player that was great strategically and socially and worked their way through the game in a fairly clean manner. Number 3, a player who was at the bottom for most of the game but was able to overcome using non-traditional techniques to get to the end. And then 4 would be other. When you look at that, which one of those sticks out to you? Is one of those considered better for you than others? Which one would you prefer as a great Survivor game?
I mean, I'll be honest, I always really did think of like 1 and 2, more of the strategy, more of the control aspects of being kind of definitive of Survivor. But I also have to say that in this new era, it's kind of less possible to play that social game. In my mind, like classic Survivor, like it was a social game. It was about how do you assemble the votes? How do you like create groups out of these very disparate, very conflicting people? Like that is what Survivor was. But a lot of the discourse around Rachel has really changed my perspective where, I can acknowledge that like there's a different type of great Survivor game and Rachel played it. And Rachel went out there, she confesses she went out there wanting to play the other type of game, right? She went out wanting to play that sort of social game of like assembling votes. That's not the game that she was handed. I think that's the ultimate criterion for a great Survivor game is, can you adapt to the game as it's presented to you? Can you take all of your expectations and hopes and change according to what happens? And I think that is really, that Rachel demonstrated, absolutely. And, people say, well, she got really lucky with this idol clue that she found in her fries. She got super lucky when Saul saved her at the tribe swap, or at the split tribal council. She also got super, super, super unlucky by being the only person in that split tribal council that was from her tribe, where all of the other group was from the Tuku tribe, So like, was Saul saving her lucky, or was she just insanely unlucky and then kind of it boomerang back? So, I think there's luck in Survivor. You have to get really lucky to win the game. Rachel made the most of her luck, and she was able to get out of situations where she was unlucky.
Yeah, I when I look at Rachel's game, I was just going into the finale. I said the only way Rachel doesn't win is if she loses Final Four immunity and they just say we can't beat her, so they end up, well, then she actually would have been gone to fire. And according to everybody, based on it, what everyone was saying out there, she would have beaten all of them in fire as well. So
yeah.
I was just convinced she was going to win. Now, what I was surprised at, and I think a lot of people were, and come to find out, we know now why it was 7-1. I was surprised that Sam only got one vote. Like, going in, I was thinking, well, he's got to have Genevieve and Andy's vote. They were Operation Italy. Why wouldn't they be on his side? Genevieve was his confidant the whole game. And then I thought he had Sierra. I thought it was Sierra and Sam. I was just like, were you as surprised as me that the vote was 7-1?
I thought he would get a couple of those. Rachel and Andy also had a thing, and I did think like Andy's heart was with Rachel more than it was with Sam. Really right out of the gate, episode 1, Andy goes to Rachel and tries to she says to her, I feel closer to you than I do to anybody else out here. And she kind of rebuffed him because, it was like too much, no, but it really was too much from a Survivor perspective. He needed too much attention from her, and that's dangerous to your game. But a few of the votes, like Sierra, who was with Sam all the way, you kind of want those loyalty votes. I do think what happens is at Ponderosa, where the jury stays while the game is still ongoing, there does seem to be kind of a groupthink that takes over. And I think if you are maybe a little more persuadable, you can kind of get caught up in that. It sounds like, from what we've heard, that everyone knew that Rachel was going to win, and that basically everybody was voting for Rachel, which, of course, makes Kyle's vote. It sounds like it was deliberately to give Sam the runner-up prize. But yeah, so I wonder if some of those votes kind of were just the group was feeling so positively for Rachel rather than they were, kind of anti-Sam.
Well, that's what Kyle had said post-show. He said, I knew everyone was voting for Rachel, and I felt that Sam played a much better game than Sue, and I felt like Sam shouldn't have to split second place money with Sue, so I wanted to give him second place by himself. He has admitted that, and that's why he voted for him. So I have no problem with that. I guess I was just surprised. I knew she was going to win. I thought he would at least have Sierra and or Genevieve's, and then maybe one other. I thought he would lose 5-2 or 4-3. I did not see 7-1, and the one, come to find out, was just a sympathy vote, really, for him, which was, I don't know, surprising. If you asked me to run you back Sam's game and be like, why did he deserve to win? I don't know. I don't really know if there was anything about his game that made him a winner, but compared to what Rachel had on her resume, she was really, really good. She was somebody that clearly people knew she was going to win. Like, we hear that all the time around, I don't know, 5-6 people left, like, can't go to the finals with her. She's going to win. And how many times does that person end up winning? Seems to happen, a lot. And I don't have any problem with her as the winner. And I thought she was one of the best winners we had in this new era.
So you agree with that assessment? You like Dom's assessment that she is. I mean, the only thing that was annoying about Kyle's vote was that it deprives her of being the first ever female in the U.S. to get a shutout victory. There have been a bunch of guys who have done it. JT against me. Cochran had it. Jeremy in Cambodia had it.
10 votes, by the way, against you. 10-0, right?
No, only 7-0 against me.
But it was only 7?
Yeah, this was back in the old school format.
Who had a 10-0 win? Somebody did.
Let's see, Cochran and Jeremy might have both had 10-0 wins.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think if anybody else got the shutout, but I think there's definitely a few others who've gotten the shutout. I'm just not thinking of.
Yeah.
Who. yeah, sadly, like, you know, you kind of want that history to be made, or I want that. Some people like the record still stay, but I feel like this would have been a great moment for them, especially because Kyle has said he thought Rachel deserved to win. You know, like he said he believed that Rachel deserved to win. So like, why not give her the vote? Why not give her that record? It's kind of a bummer because, you know, the jurors can always vote how they want to vote. That's sort of my perspective.
When we were talking about Dominic's tweet from earlier, and we talk about that third point that he made about the underdogs, just off the top of my head, who were great Survivor winners who had that storyline? I guess Chris Underwood would be one, right? He would be technically
Chris is like
number
is he
3
an underdog. Like he's sort of like a dog from outer space, you know, like he's like a side dog, you know, just like no relationship with the game at all. Then comes
Gabler. Would he be considered for that third
Gabler's
spot?
Interesting. I mean, I think the ones that, you know, it's interesting, like so at that tribal council, there's a question from Andy where he says, you know, you maybe the game you're most like is Mike Holloway and Ben Driebergen. And I think maybe it's those two. Now, what's interesting about both of their games is that they kind of were in that top dog position until basically the middle of the game. Both of them were really in dominant spots. Then they kind of were identified as threats and everyone was against them. But going into their finales, they really were the underdogs. You know, in Mike's case, he had to win out. He had to win a bunch of challenges. Ben had to play like a lot of idols, his, you know, Ben bombs for those who remember back to then. So, you know, I think that those guys are maybe the ones who have the most similar games to Rachel. I mean, Gabler's interesting because Gabler is sort of like, he is kind of an underdog in that way. But not in the sense where he really had to like fight back, you know, in the way that Rachel did, where she was a target, everyone was gunning for her, and he really had to fight to survive. Gabler kind of was just sort of a surprise, you know, to the people at the final tribal, right? Like in that way, he was like, where did this guy come from, you know? But I don't know, he didn't really have to like have that sort of like, you know, scrappy underdog tale.
What about going further back? The guy who won on the season with, I think it was Eliza's season, Chris Doherty.
Chris from Vanuatu. Yeah, Chris Doherty from Vanuatu.
He was like, it was like 6 women left and him, and he survived that whole thing. He would be considered definitely an underdog. He was never, I don't remember him ever being in control of anything.
Yeah, he just had to kind of flip back and forth between these groups and just, you know, pull. And yeah, I don't think anyone thought that he would win. And he was, you know, the last guy that eliminated all the other guys. He was the sort of last straggler and just, you know, through his wiles, you know, was able to kind of snake in there to the end. I think that's a great example though. Like, you know, those are the games that I sort of grew up kind of thinking were awesome. Were the ones where it's just like through strategic manipulation. Like that was the kind of underdog I thought was like, wow, like that person like was managed to be in this vote and then that vote and then just kind of like weave their way forward. And I never really valued the immunity winner, but like it is true, it's a great game and like it's part of the game. Winning immunities, playing idols is part of the game.
Since you're the Survivor historian here and you can recall a lot of things from the past, you know, we talk about Rachel, and obviously that's debatable. Some people will say yes, greatest winner of New Era. Some might say she's up there, but I don't know if I could put her first. Here's something that I don't know if it's debatable, but I could easily be forgetting because blindsides happen on this show all the time. However, can we say that Operation Italy was the greatest move of the New Era? Because this wasn't just a blindside. This was a faction of 3 overtaking a 4-person majority that, number one, had 2 idols. Stu and Rachel had idols at that point. They had a block a vote with Rachel, and and Rachel had immunity. I when it was happening on the show, I'm like, well, this is the way edit goes. They want you going into every tribal council thinking there are options. Very rarely do you go in and be like, yeah, it's a done deal. They want you to think there's at least a possibility it could go another way. And this one seemingly was like, wait, Sam, Genevieve, and Andy have talked this out. They are running it. We saw Andy go back to camp, lay the groundwork, say exactly what he needed to say. But then you're always in the back of your head thinking like, well, maybe editing isn't showing us something because they don't want to give away that this plan's going to blow up in their face. And it worked. And I was just like, is that the greatest move in the New Era that you can remember?
I mean, so I will say when it happened, I tweeted, you know, this is the greatest move in the New Era. And I got a lot of responses about that, explaining why it wasn't. So there's a lot of like other good moves in the new era. Like, you know, when Marianne blindsided Omer, for example, in season 42, it was, you know, potentially a game-winning move for her. Right, exactly. You really got to be in the weed. And there were like even things that I didn't remember. I was like, oh yes, that was a good move. I had no recollection of that, you know, and even with the you know, the attention that I paid to the game. But you know, what was so exciting about that move to me was the way that Andy had to sell it. You know, he really went and to each person in that kind of old school strategy where we're talking about, you know, each person sort of like seeded this idea just a little, just to get the paranoia up, to split the votes and get them exactly where he wanted them. And then Genevieve with her very coy kind of like, oh, look at this, Teeny, look what I've got in my pocket, and then kind of slips it away so she can't look too closely lest she see that it's not a real idol. What sort of argues against it is that Andy is voted out next. So this is like Andy's big move, right? And then he's immediately voted out the next episode. Now, that wasn't totally blowback from Operation Italy. It honestly was more blowback from him taking credit for Operation Italy, right? Like he, like at the start of the subsequent episode, it seems like Andy is able to kind of downplay his role in the blind side, so nobody is worried about him. But then when he thinks Rachel's going home, he like argues to Rachel about what a great strategist he is because he wants to get her on the jury, you know, as an advocate for him. And it totally blows up because she's got her idol, and then she's like, oh, you made such a compelling case about why you're a huge target that now I'm going to vote you out. So you know, that in that way it's like not a great move because it immediately sort of unravels Andy's game. But you know, just in terms of the excitement and the level and the type of strategy that it took, I definitely think it's up there.
Yeah, and the way that, you know, Sam and Genevieve still playing it and selling it at Tribal when Jeff asks, does anybody have an Unity Idol to play?
Yeah,
and he looks at her and she's like, no, I'm good. I'm good with this. I'm good with the decision. Like still playing it. Not that anything could have changed at that point. The votes had already been made. But just to not let anybody in on it. And then I thought it was just great TV, and maybe that's why I added like this could be one of the best moves we've ever seen.
I think it's definitely up there. I mean, and certainly like in terms of the excitement around it, it's up there as like a great episode where, like you said, you just do not think it's going to pan out. You know, okay, exciting plan, and then you know it blows up. We get it, and then it actually plays out. It's unbelievable.
And in their confessionals leading up to that Tribal, I think all three of them were saying, so many things have to go right for this to work.
Yeah.
And they all did.
Yeah, it was
like,
really.
And it was just, and it was. They were saying after the fact. I remember reading online, like it was even that much better because it was only one vote off. It's not like there was 10 people left and you pulled this off. There was literally a one vote swing to where if they did what they should have done, that group of 4, they could have avoided this, and they chose to stick with the let's split the votes when there was only one vote. Oh, he didn't have to split it with numerous other people. It was just they had to go 2-2 or else it doesn't work.
Right. I mean, and it was perfect. Like, and that's the thing. People say, well, I mean, you know, whenever someone doesn't, like Andy doesn't win, so people are going to go back and say, well, that was a mistake because maybe if he hadn't done that, he would have won. But I thought it was the right move for Andy at that time because Andy just did not have. Andy had this great amount of self-awareness, which is really hard on Survivor, you know, because everyone, you know, it's such a hard game. You're constantly struggling out there. Every vote you're a part of, or even the votes you're not a part of, you feel like you've done something, like you've worked so hard just to stay there. And to have the self-awareness that Andy did to say, nobody on that jury respects me. You know, I need to do something. And whether I go out next or, you know, maybe this sets me up to win, I have to do something to like prove that I deserve to win this game because I've got to build up my credibility with the jury. You know, I think that really is the sign of a great Survivor player who knows that, who is aware of what the jury perceives him as and is able to kind of react to that.
Do you believe that? I mean, I think this now coming to find out and reading all the post-show interviews that they've all done and kind of what we talked about earlier, Ponderosa is kind of more of a group think. And I think everybody pretty much knows going in, you know, they said it there. And I feel like we get that every season. We see when they did go to cast final votes, some of them struggling with their vote. Seemingly now looking back, it looks like that was more of an acting job. They all knew they were voting for Rachel. I don't think they struggled. They might have been told by production to make it seem like they were struggling, but you can't all be struggling and then vote 7-1. You would think that some people would be voting for somebody else. I don't think they were struggling as much, but I really do think that was more of maybe for TV purposes. I don't know. That's the impression I got when watching those final votes. Did it occur to you? I was like, wait a second. Are you really struggling this much? Do you really think some of them didn't have an idea who they were voting for?
No, they definitely all knew. I mean, Sam had a phenomenal tribal council, right? And I do think like if they went in expecting to vote for Rachel, and Sam was so good that I think like maybe it kind of like they just wanted to like sit for a minute and think with it. I seem to remember, and maybe I'm misremembering, that Sierra was the one who notably struggled, unless I'm misremembering this. And like maybe she felt the most obligation to vote for Sam, so she wanted to like play it up a little bit. Like, so when he's watching it back, he's not going to feel totally betrayed by her because they had the closest relationship out there. But yeah, I'm trying to think of who else really kind of hammed it up in the voting booth. I don't seem to remember. I think it was Sierra probably who did it the most.
And so Sam has said post show, that was the one vote I'm really surprised at. He said, we're cool now, but yeah, in the moment, thought I was getting Sierra's. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't.
And you can say we're cool now, but I still remember Aaron Lobdell not voting for me in Survivor. I'm still like, yeah, we're cool now, but I'm still salty about it. It's been like 15 years.
You had mentioned Final Tribal, and it's funny because, like I said, I thought Rachel was going to win going in. But the only way she didn't win that game was if she lost fire. She didn't win Final Four immunity and then lost fire. But according to everybody there, she was going to win fire. So they're sitting there at Final Tribal. Sue has basically edited out a Final Tribal. The only thing we hear Sue say is on 3 different occasions, I'm 59. Like,
right.
All she kept talking, the only answers we got out of her was her age. It's like, great. But when Sam is up there and everybody is in agreement that Sam won the Final Tribal, I mean, I don't think it's even close. It's not that Rachel did bad. It's just that Sam did so much better and was excellent. And then when he started presenting his case of, I've had 10 votes against me at 4 different tribals, like I was like, oh, okay. Thank you for recapping that for me because I wouldn't have remembered. I thought he absolutely destroyed it. One of the best Final Tribal arguments I've ever heard. And it got him 1 sympathy vote. Like, that's what sucks for me. I would have appreciated if he got more.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I really thought it was going to be a close vote, and I think that would have been certainly a more exciting ending, of course. And I think he did deserve it, at least from the Final Tribal Council perspective. He really argued really well. I thought he did a good job of puncturing holes in her arguments. When she said, well, Sam didn't. Sam wanted me out and here I am. And he's like, well, yeah, well, you wanted me out. Here I am. Neither of us got our way. We were both against each other. I think Sam compellingly said, I've been an underdog and a target this whole time. He said, I voted correctly every single time.
That was the other thing. Yeah.
There is an asterisk to that because he didn't vote every single time. So, some of his voting correctly was because he didn't vote. I thought he made a great case for himself.
Yeah. No, I was like, wow, thank you for reminding me of this because I didn't remember all of that. And he kind of basically said my game is different from her. I don't want to say he accused her of lucking out, but he did say her game. What was his exact wording? Her game was a game of, did he say it was a game of luck or?
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah. It was something along the lines of, hey, she got Saul's, she got the vote from Saul to save her. She found something in a basket of fries or whatever.
Right.
Where my game didn't have to include getting quote unquote advantages like that.
And even argued against immunity wins, right? He's like, I didn't need to win immunity. I found a way through the votes, in spite of not having immunity, which I actually always have felt like I kind of made the same argument myself. Like, I felt like that's a compelling argument, like if you can find a way without immunity, like why does is that not as good as winning an immunity? But the immunity, but he should be, on the other hand, like you don't get to discount the immunity win because that's a part of the game. Like it is really a part of the game. And what I think is so cool about Survivor is that every jury kind of gets to decide for themselves what they value. Do you think it's great that someone can win immunities, or do you think that kind of like is, gives them a cheat code and that winning, doing strategical stuff is more important? I mean, that's the jurors, decision.
Yeah, that's the debate until the end of time with this show. Every season is different. Every jury is different, and it's what they value. But like you said, when they're all there at Ponderosa, it does become a groupthink, and it's almost like a jury at a trial, being sequestered and being like, okay, well, for the most part, juries have to come to a 12-0 decision or you get a hung jury. And when they're all talking, it seems like some people can easily be swayed about other people. It's why, you and I have talked about this in the past numerous times about how I've always asked you, like, Steven, when are we ever going to get a close vote on this show? It's never 4-3. It's always 7-0 or 6-1. And it's probably because of Ponderosa and
Last season was a close vote. Last season was 5-3. And, with all the drama around Maria being the swing vote, which would have actually handed Charlie the win. That was an exciting final tribal council. And also, like we were saying, they never changed their votes for the first time ever. When Jeff asked that question of who changed their votes, like a bunch of people raised their hands at that. So 46 was sort of a very strange outlier season for a lot of reasons. And that's one of the many examples of why.
Which brings me to something we always talk about in regards to the finale, which seems to be getting worse and worse. And that is the reunion show. So back in the day, we know that they've just essentially killed the live reunion show.
Yeah.
I think for 50, you almost have to. Nobody wants to see this special season 50 edition that's going to have all former cast members. I can't imagine they're going to do another. Let's just film it out there. But
I hope you're right. I really hope
you're
you're right, because I think that you're well. Anyway, keep going. But yeah, I hope you're right.
Well, I don't know if you were looking at the timer on this. So I watch it Central Time, 7 to 9, 2-hour finale. When they started the reunion show, it was 8:39. They went from 8:39 to 8:45, and they took a commercial break. And then they came back at 8:49 and went to 8:53. So that's 4 minutes. The first time was 6 minutes. Then they took another commercial break, and they came back at 8:56 to 8:58, which was just a 2-minute promo for season 48. So not only can you say, oh my God, the reunion show was 20 minutes. No, it wasn't 20 minutes. It was 10 minutes of a reunion show. That's just ridiculous. And it bothers me that Jeff says the reason why we went to this and we're recording the reunion show out there is because it's so real and it's so raw and you can't be influenced by social media. It's like, great. Then why are you giving it only 10 minutes?
Right. Yeah. If it's so raw and so incredible. Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. It's so generic too. I mean, it really felt like just another tribal council, like, what is it like to blindside someone? Like that level of question, what does it feel like to be on Survivor? Like it's the same questions that he asks every single tribal council. And I mean, I get it. It's obviously so much cheaper. They don't have to produce a whole hour-long show in Los Angeles. They don't have to fly the
16 people out. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't have to pay the contestants. We used to get $10,000 checks just to show up at that thing. And, that's whatever, $200,000 right there. So so obviously for cost saving purposes, that's the big reason they do it. I like you. I sort of just wish he would own up to that, because I miss the reunion show. I thought it was so fun. I love the cut between these drawn, emaciated contestants after starving for, back then it was 39 days in the wild, to these, people who have been clearly binge eating for the last 3 months and just they're in their they're in their finery. I also like that they're confronting each other. Jeff says, well, this is more raw because, but not really, because they've all been living this kumbaya existence. They're all applauding each other. And then what actually happens is people go back to their homes. They remember, oh, this is my family. Those people are kind of strangers to me. They watch each other on television, talking crap about each other. What you said, what about me? How could you and then they show up to this finale. And of course, everyone is all very polite. They're all very aware of social media now, but there's still, I feel like there's more vulnerability. I feel like those tensions are actually exacerbated in the later reunion show, versus just seeing all these tired, desperate, hungry contestants shoveling pizza in their face and kind of trying to do one more analogy about what it's like to blindside someone.
I think Sam said it in a post-show interview, and I feel like I hear everybody now in the new era when the post reunion show is recorded. When I do read their exit interviews with Dalton, I feel like every one of them says it man, I don't even really remember that reunion show because I was so I can't believe this is over. I've been living for 26 days. I've had a camera in my face and had to talk about this and this and this. And I don't really remember what happened on the reunions. I can't really remember what anybody said. So you're not getting any insight.
Yeah.
Operation Italy wasn't even brought up at this reunion show. It's like, come on. It's just, like I said, I'm sure for 48, I know for 48, obviously 48 was filmed in April, May of last year. That reunion show was filmed on site. 49 and 50 will be filming in, early spring of 2025. But God, at least for 50, since it's a signature, nice round number, 50 seasons of a television show, man, if you do another 20-minute reunion show, that is going to really, really piss a lot of people off, I think.
Yeah. I think it takes away just from the feeling of grandeur that Survivor had. And of course, when I was on Survivor had 14 million viewers. Now it has 4 million viewers, 5 million. And it's like the highest rated scripted show, right? Or I'm sorry, unscripted show. Yeah. It's one of the highest rated non-sports shows that's on there. And so the TV landscape has so fundamentally changed. Obviously, the cost structures have changed too. They can't just like blow through cash like they used to because they're not raking in cash like they used to. But I do think like the show itself suffers a little bit because they take away some of just the sort of like sense of like real adventure and grandeur and these people going on this like wild, obviously not changing location has an impact on that too. I think that's the same kind of problem for the show where you don't feel like the specialness of it as much. And yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful for it. I know that I'm like one of the few people who I think you're not a big fan of the rites of passage, right? Where like they used to go and hear from every contestant and they'd play the sobby music. But I liked how this time they had the jury speaks and then they would give each little contestant like a little montage of like their moments and then got some of their perspective about what they wanted for, what they were interested in from the jurors or from the finalists. And I thought that was like a kind of cool way to honor the journeys that all these people had been on and kind of tie it into the drama of the episode. I liked it when they went back and did the pre-jurors. I mean, that's also what's missing from all of this. Some of the people who were most emotionally affected by this whole experience are the ones who were voted out the soonest. And I think like it's like both like fun as a viewer and kind of really nice as a contestant to give them their last words, whether that's edited into the show or as part of the reunion. Like I loved it when the pre-jurors came out, like that's who I wanted to hear from most. Tell me how your 6 days on Survivor like changed your life forever. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to move forward a little bit to season 50. There's a couple things I want to talk about, even though we have no idea. They haven't started casting it yet. I'm sure they've thrown out the word and they know people that want to be on it. First off,
the casting process. It's happening. Yeah.
For this particular cast, 47. Obviously, it's just a guessing game on our part. Who do you think from 47 makes it on 50? Or, I mean, obviously, we know who's a candidate, but we don't even know if 50 is going to be, hey, we don't want to include any past winners. We don't know that yet. Maybe there will be a few. Maybe they're just going to be like, no, we don't want to do any former winners. We want a first-time winner for season 50. We don't want anybody to have a chance to win it twice like Tony and Sandra. So I don't know. But of the names, let's just rule Rachel out. Let's just say they're not going with former winners for 50. Who do you think good shot to make it?
I honestly think number one is Andy. And I think he played the game. I think like production wants you to play the game. He was constantly looking for moves. He was, he made a huge move. He made like, potentially one of the biggest moves of the whole new era. And I think his willingness to try anything was so compelling. The other thing that is great about Andy from a TV perspective is he was this combination of very like thoughtful and rational and like extremely emotional and messy. He had both sides to him. And I think that's what they want. They want someone who's going to like be really intelligent about the game and also like be kind of chaotic about the game. And I feel like Andy was in that way kind of a perfect contestant. Andy also had great confessionals. He was really good at hyping up his own game. I know a lot of people who were like Andy, who said on social media, Andy is playing the best game out there. And their rationale was that Andy had told them, he was playing the best game out there. But he made a very good case for himself. I think Andy really talks.
He's great. He's great TV. For sure.
Would you agree with that? Number one?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I would want to see him play again. I also think he is somebody that if he plays again on 50 could be the first person voted out just because everybody has seen his game and they're saying this guy is too much of a wild card Or I could see Andy wanting to make a move so early and not wait around and just want to be like, hey, let's go after this, because he performed Operation Italy and who's the guy behind it, that he might want to do that so early. And people are just like, look, he's almost too much of a loose cannon. But I agree. I think he should be on.
Yeah.
The only other two that I think should be or have a good chance, to me, and this is just my opinion, are Genevieve and Sam.
Yeah.
I thought Genevieve was an outstanding what's the word I'm looking for? An outstanding kind of like dissection or psychoanalysis of a Survivor player, because she was somebody that struggled with, am I going to be fine with lying to people, or am I just going to be, what she kept saying, Genevieve the player versus Genevieve the person. And I found that to be really, really interesting, because it's like she was doing all these devious things. And once again, I took a lot out of her post-show interview with Dalton, where she was like, I didn't like watching myself on TV. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. If they asked me back, would I do it? Absolutely. But it was really hard for me to watch myself on TV. I guess she's very self-conscious. She didn't like the way she looked and that as well. But I just thought her whole psychoanalyzation of herself, I thought made for really good TV, and the fact that she struggled with it. And then I think Sam, just because second place finisher, solid guy all around, just I think he's good TV. I think he led, if you go to the Survivor Fact Checker Instagram account, I think he led in confessionals this year, if I'm not mistaken. Sam won most confessionals, I think.
I believe that. I think, because Sam had a huge just presence all season long. He was sort of the dominant member on his pre-merge tribe, Gata. And he also had like a lot of like weird, funny, goofy character moments. Like he had his freestyle rap, like there was not a lot of actually like weird, goofy, like character moments like that from any of the other contestants. Of course, Rome gave us a lot of that, but there was just, this was a very like game focused season as a whole. And I think Sam did kind of bring, a little personality to it. I do think for Sam, the challenge is going to be like that spot as like, the square jawed, tall, white guy is like very, there's a lot of there's
a lot of people in line for that one.
Yeah. So it's like, you've got Xander on season 41, like probably Sam outpaces Xander, but if you're getting Genevieve and Andy from this, like maybe I think Sam is probably in the mix, but I don't think he's a layup. I agree with you about Genevieve. I think she was phenomenal. She was a very fun gamer to watch. She gave great confessional. She always had like goofy faces. Her like facial reactions were very like enjoyable.
Talk to herself during challenges.
Yes, like
whisper to herself.
Recite like the food she was hoping to eat. That was so great. She's Canadian. Those Canadians are nice, right? Maybe that's why it was hard for her to. Yeah, and she really internalized the emotional impact of the game, which I think you're exactly right. Like, they love that. Production loves that. Jeff loves that. Jeff's whole thing is people getting transformed by the experience. Genevieve being so open to that. I think that's probably it. I think you look at someone like Teeny, like probably not, right? I mean, they were not a particularly well-liked contestant, unfortunately. Caroline, who I really loved as a player, who was so positive, small screen presence, I just don't think anybody else. Honestly, I think there's a world where we see John Lovett back. John Lovett was great for the one episode he was on. He also brought in a lot of viewers. I knew just like anecdotally a lot of people who were only watching for John Lovett. So I do think there's a world where like they have like a pre-merge tribe or just like, or some kind of gimmicky tribe. And he, or just he's kind of in this wild card spot. Like they brought Francesca back for season 26. Of like, let's give him another go because he is great for the franchise.
What was the thing that Andy did in episode 1 to him that isolated Andy, and everybody thought there's no way this Andy guy is lasting more than, he might be gone as you're watching that first episode, he might be gone this episode. He might vote him out because he's just such a weirdo. What did he do again to John? I'm totally blanking on what he did.
Well, I think it was Andy had this complete collapse, right?
Yeah.
So he was running in this challenge.
Fainted, right?
He not even. He like sort of like had a panic attack, like claimed it was like, oh, he overheated. Then he had this like whole thing about how nobody, cheers for him when he's chopping coconuts and John chops coconuts and everybody's cheering for John, but nobody's cheering for him. And I think what he did in that, if I'm remembering correctly, was he cited John as his like one ally out there. He's like, John's the only person who I'm friends with, but like, I want him gone instead of me. He like kind of like both like called him out as an ally and like betrayed him in the same conversation. It was such a mess. And then I think, what John has said in his exit interviews was that because Andy was such an obvious vote, it then kind of fell on him, like for two reasons. Like one is like, no one on Survivor wants to make the obvious vote just because you're on Survivor, you got to be doing crazy things, but also because of the shot in the dark where you have to vote. You don't want to vote for the person who knows they're going home because they might play their shot in the dark. So and then it could be you. And are you really willing to take that 1 in 6 chance? So it's like inherently the person next to the person who's the real target. And that happened to John.
Speaking of shot in the dark, is it time we get rid of this? It just seems like it hasn't worked out, I think, the way that they have wanted it to. It's only been successful, I believe, one time. And hell, what was it? I can't remember how many were left. 7, maybe 8 left, where they're just like, yeah, we'll give up our shot in the dark. Like, it just seems like there's no point to this anymore.
Yeah. I'm going to argue the counter. I mean, I think like because it's so gimmicky and so silly and it never works except that one time for Caleb, and then Caleb was voted out the next episode anyway. Yeah. The actual like function of the shot in the dark does not seem that useful. But what I think it does do is create that pressure we were just talking about, where like you have to blindside someone. And I think from a production perspective, they like that. They don't like the episodes where everyone goes up to someone and says, okay, it's going to be you tonight, I'm sorry. And then that person goes. They want there to be some amount of risk, no matter how obvious it is on its surface. And I think the shot in the dark creates that, because you just have to have that other layer of strategy so that the person doesn't play their shot in the dark.
A couple more things about season 50. You had said, obviously, that, casting is going on right now. Do you know, are they reaching out to former winners? Like, are they being talked to?
From what I have heard, no. Like, from what I've heard, they are not reaching out to former winners. I mean, Of course, like I could be misinformed about that. I used to really have my finger on the pulse of these things, but I really I keep my finger away from the pulse. I don't want my finger anywhere near that. So it's possible that they've changed. It's also possible that they'll do it later, right? It's possible that they'll cast 12 people and bring in, or whatever, 14 people and bring in 6 winners later, or because and fly them out separately, and maybe it's like the winner squad, and you got to be, who knows, right? But from what I have heard, there are no winners so far.
And then finally, when it comes to 50, do you think it hurts? I mean, let's see, Jeremy. Do you think it hurts? I guess it would, now that I think about it. I'm thinking about this out loud. Carolyn Weiger. That's her last name? Is that how you pronounce her last name?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it hurts that she went on Traitors and that hurts her chances for 50? Because I was going to say, do you think it hurts other Survivor players who have appeared on the challenge and 50? But then when I'm thinking about Traitors, Jeremy, former winner, Boston Rob, former winner, they're on the next season of Traitors. So if they're not talking to former winners, they're out. But Carolyn was not a former winner, and she's going to be on Traitors. And I'm wondering, this is somebody that when her season ended, I said to you, this is someone that's absolutely going to be on season 50, right? And we were just like, oh yeah, I mean, just a total character. I wonder if that's going to hurt someone like her, that they're just, not that they're against people going on other shows, but it's almost like an oversaturation of Carolyn Weiger on our television set. I don't know.
Oh no, but Jeff has been quite explicit about it. They are against people going on other shows. He has said, we are not that interested in people. And I know, anything Jeff says, he's not like legally bound to. He says if you're going to go do other shows, like we're not that interested in you anymore. We want the people, our Survivor contestants to be Survivor contestants. We don't want them to be like out on all these other shows. And I mean, I don't know Carolyn. I've never spoken to her in my life, but the rumors I've heard are that she is not in casting now. And that is probably because of Traitors. So she made it, and I think people knew that. I think people knew I think Jeff had said what he said before even Carolyn probably was cast on the Traitors. So, maybe she made a choice that I would much rather spend 2 weeks in a castle than, 4 weeks in the jungle, which is not a terrible choice.
Yeah.
But I think probably people like Rob and Jeremy and Tony, they know that they're not really a part of, they're probably not coming back for too many more Survivor seasons. And for Boston Rob, like if they ever do season 100 and they need him at, age whatever, they'll go to him. You know, like they're not gonna like not cast the most iconic player in the show's franchise, or arguably the most iconic player in the show's franchise. I gotta say arguably for anything, because if I say anything definitively, there's gonna be a lot of people tweeting at me telling me why I'm wrong. But arguably the most iconic player in the show's franchise, you know, they'll find him. But like if you're Carolyn and you've been on once, and like, yeah, you were a huge character and you were so fun, but like, you don't have that level of, you know, franchise-wide credibility. So I do think it, like you, like prior to that, I would have said like number 1 seed for season 50 is Carolyn, like 100% Carolyn.
Yep.
And now I don't even think she's going to be on the cast.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me now that you say that. It's just like, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, the other 3 former Survivor players that are on season 3 of the Traitors are all former winners: Boston Rob, Jeremy, and Tony, which will be interesting to see. Do they team up? Do they go against each other?
Can't wait. Really can't wait.
And this is a couple weeks away, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, like early, I think January 6th or something, early January. No, I'm very excited. You know, Jeremy's a good friend. He and I played together. And I really hope he just gets, you know, humiliated.
You don't want him to do well?
No, of course I want him to do well. Of course I would love to see him do well and win the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting. So, cause I'm trying to think. So first season, it was Suri, a Survivor.
3-1.
And then last season, it was CT and Trishelle to challenge people. So be interesting to see if we get someone in the Bachelor world, if we get back to Survivor winner, a challenge winner.
A housewife.
I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, just looking at the cast or thinking of the cast off the top of my head, Survivor has the most from one particular show on this upcoming season of
Is that right?
With 4.
More
I don't
than
think any other show has 4.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Bachelor,
and like
there's
Rob
only
and Jeremy
2.
are buddies, you know, and Tony and Jeremy played together. So like, I feel like they're naturally going to, but of course, like one of those 4 has to be a traitor. So that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, and we don't know how many they're going to start out with this year. Last season, it was 2, wasn't it? It was Parvati and.
Well, they started with Dan and Phaedra, and they recruited Parvati. Yeah.
So yeah, they started with 2. First season, it was 3 right off the bat. Yeah.
Right.
And then they recruited Ari. Okay. Yeah, I can't wait for it. But again, Steven, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Glad we can finally do video here of Survivor chats. We'll have you back on in May to break down season 48 and what we have coming up for that. So again, man, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. And happy holidays to you and yours going forward.
Well, thank you too. And it's like I say, this is like one of the most fun things I do. I love getting to come on twice a year, and I'm really grateful to you for having me, and to your listeners for listening.
No, thank you, man. Appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
All right, bye-bye. Happy holidays.
All right.